Hello everyone, this is Ben, that guy with the French accent, and I come to you today with a new topic of conversation about tabletop role-playing games, and more specifically, clones, and the clones of Dungeons and Dragons in particular. There was a person, Mr. Sycamore, if I remember correctly, who was attempting to organize the different types of clones and retro clones and how they are related to the Dungeons and Dragons versions of TSR. And I thought I would help, and one thing following the other, I came up with a kind of infographic of my own, which I will upload on the internet and post a link in the description of this video if you want to have your copy. The infographic has been generally well received by people on social media, and I thought that since some people have had questions, I would make a general video with the graphic, describe it, and add a few comments here and there so that it's clarified for those who would want to use it. Because the infographic itself is basically put together to be able to give to another person or to show to another person and to say, well, this is how these different games are related together. Whether that is to choose a game to play with or to explain one's own choice, saying, I'm going to run this campaign, that's why I chose this particular game, right? So without further ado, I will jump into the description, and you should be able now to see the chart in question, right? So the first thing I want to point out here is that the organization goes, by, each row represents a specific edition of the TSR game. And they are not organized chronologically because it was much more simple to actually go by usefulness, visually speaking, right? You'll see why. The goal being to explain the relationship between the games. It's not a lesson about the history of the game. Now, we have a few elements here that deserve the definitions. One is, speaking of clones, what is a retroclone? That's particularly a first generation retroclone in this graphic. Represents a document that reproduces the rules or emulates the rules of a TSR version of Dungeons and Dragons using the system reference documents of the open game license or licenses available to us in the hobby. They just have a function of recreating this rule set under the open game license, probably generally for the purpose of publication by third-party publishers, to take the document and then publish modules, settings, and so on. Now, that was the first generation of clones chronologically, though there are still fourth generation clones that are coming out now. One of the latest ones was the old school essentials, which is counted here as a first generation clone. And soon enough, the second generation clones started coming out. The second generation clones here are defined as those games that use some open content from the first generation clones to come up with their own twists and variants on the rule systems or setting, a particular setting of their own, which implies a specific treatment of the rules to emulate the setting, right? So, all right. So, if we zoom, if we look you can see the graphic, right? And it has 4 rows. The original Dungeons Dragons game of 1974, the basic expert Dungeons and Dragons, which falls into it the basic expert companion master immortal sets, which were a revision in 1983 of the original basic expert rule set of 1981, and the rule cyclopedia, which is a combination of all the BECMI box set in one volume, minus immortals. Okay, and then the third row is the advanced first edition, Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, and the fourth is Advanced Dungeons and Dragons second edition. Now we're going to zoom in on this so we can see clearly the rows. So the first row is Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. Original Dungeons and Dragons of 1974. This is where it all began. And to organize all this, what I did is, since the clone, the main clone known for original Dungeons and Dragons is Sword and Wizardry, that you can see here in the column first generation. But Sword and Wizardry exists in different versions. There are 4 versions. The one missing here being the Sword and Wizardry Light, or Continual Light, which is a version of the rules that are only 4 pages long, to just introduce the game during an evening with friends and play something with rules that are minimalistic. So these versions are the ones the most known in the OSR and in the tabletop role-playing game hobby in general. The Sword and Wizardry white box reproduces strictly the 3 little brown booklets that were in the wood grain box that started it all. This is the system of original Dungeons & Dragons without the bells and whistles. It has the 3 classes, the fighting man, cleric, magic user, and the related spells and so on. Now, the second version of the Sword and Wizardry rules that you might come across is the Sword and Wizardry core rules, which are actually the first chronological versions of the Sword and Wizardry. And that's essentially the 3 little brown booklets, plus elements of Greyhawk, and I think 1 or 2 other supplements, like Blackmore. But mostly Greyhawk. That is, it includes polyhedral dice, for instance, which were not in the original little brown booklets, and elements like these. It has, I think it has the Thief, or maybe not. Anyway, that's still a very slim rule set with just elements that very early on made it into the game from the supplement 1 Greyhawk. And then we have probably the most known version now, since it was the one that was picked up and kind of built with Necromancer games. That's the Swords and Wizardry Complete Rule book, or Complete Rules. And that's pretty much proto-advanced Dungeons and Dragons. That's the state of the original Dungeons and Dragons game around 1978. When it was just about transition into full advanced Dungeons and Dragons. When it had all the supplements out, and that Sword and Wizardry version represents a sort of emulation of selected rules into a coherent whole that is not quite advanced, but has all the elements there. That is the assassins, the paladins, the rangers, and so on. Personal note, this is one of my favorite versions here. The complete rules are very, very good to emulate the original feel of the game. So those are the Sword and Sorcery is essentially the most known first generation clone to emulate the original game. There were others, right? Delving Deeper, which you find here, Delving Deeper is actually could count as a first generation clone in that sense. I just added it for the sake of having another version that is clean and can be used in wide variety of versions ways in there. There was Microlight 74 is another one that emulated the original rules. But as you can see, the Sword in Wizardry rule set and the other original D&D clones created their own second generation of games, which have their own specificities and flavors, right? So White Star, for instance, is a science fiction treatment of the original rules of Dungeons Dragons. So instead of having medieval fantasy, you're into the sci-fi space opera realm. You can emulate with that straight out of the books shown here. You will have Star Knights that act like Jedi. You can have robots and replicants. You can have mechs, all sorts of stuff like that. So you can replicate Star Trek, you can replicate Star Wars, you can replicate Andromeda, name your favorite sci-fi series, you name it. Okay. Operation White Box, that's the rules of the game used for World War II type operations on the field, with very light rules, concentrating on the feel of the battlefield and what's going on in the imaginary world. Shinobi and Samurai is a treatment that is what used to be Oriental Adventures, right? It's a Japanese treatment of Japanese flavor of the original rules with all the Ronins, the monks, and so on and so forth. Warriors of the Red Planet. Oh, I see a typo. I should probably correct that later. So Warriors of the Red Planet is the treatment for Mars, the Algarized Burrows, right? Likewise, Raiders of the Lost Artifacts, that's self-explanatory. Indiana Jones. Freebooters, that's more the pirates. You'll find, besides those on the market, you'll find things to play, gunslingers. You will find many variants like this of little booklets that use the original rules to create their own feel like that. And that's the main attraction of the OD&D clones, I would say. That if you want minimalistic rules and you want the most bang for your buck in terms of being able to play a different flavor entirely or mix up different flavors. For instance, I want samurais and random in space, or this is where to go. Like you pick up a few of these variants and you make up your own soup like this. That's the best out of these games based on the original game. All right, so immediately there I put you can see the basic set Holmes D&D. That's a basic set that was published in 1977. Originally, that was a revision of the original rules, specifically geared towards introducing the advanced game that was about to come out. And there is one clone out there that's called Blue Holm that tries to make it a complete game. And I think this game has its fans, so it must succeed at it. I'm not an expert at it personally. But it deserves a mention, and Holmes D&D has always been a little apart because of its status of it was the first basic set, and it was intended, as I said, as an introduction to advanced, so it was kind of its own ovni or its own UFO in the D&D TSR constellation. Unlike the basic expert game, which was meant to be a complete game that we can see here. which then gave us the BECMI, the Basic Expert Companion Master Immortal Rules. And of these five, the first four were combined to give us the Rule Cyclopedia. Right? Here, we've got two main first generation clones here. Labyrinth Lord was the first chronologically. But now the most popular is Old School Essentials, by far. Both of these games have their basic version, which is the emulation of BX, but they also both come with advanced quote-unquote expansions, which make them also clones of Advanced Dungeons & Dragons 1st edition. Okay? These BX clones and BX itself inspired a plethora of games as well. How to tell them apart is for the BX D&D versions, if it uses race as class, it's pretty sure that it was based on the BX rules. BX will, and their clones will appeal to people who want a clear, streamlined as possible rule set in TSR, in the TSR era of D&D. So this is why you find in the second generation of clones, this is why you find Adventurer Conqueror King system of Autarch, the Dungeon Crawl Classic DCC RPG, which uses elements of 3rd edition, combines them, and comes up with his own wacky set of rules, which are very fun for the people who like it. People who like random tables, random effects for magic spells, and will love it. Lamentation of the Flame Priestess is a little more straight as a clone, but it has its own specificity, its own side rules on skills, if I remember, and stuff like that. But what really sets apart Lamentation of the Flame Princess is its catalog of offerings and its vibe, which is very much some people will say edgy, but Lamentation of the Flame Princess is not afraid of going into the gore, the horror scenarios, the controversies that could be used in a controversial content that could be used in a game. Mutant Crawl Classics is just a variation of DCC, but this time kind of like reminiscent of Gamma World and games like this. Mutant Future, same thing. But where Mutant Crawl Classic is a bit like a Wahoo Gonzo, like DCC RPG. Mutant Future is more of a straight emulation of something between BX, D&D, and Gamma World. Hulks and Horror is mentioned as an example of the variants that exist out there. It has the thing that I remember from it was that it had aliens that were squid people, which I found was hilarious. It's a good game. Huh? It's very tight. The guy who made this is a very straight rules oriented guy, so it's very tight. Basic Fantasy was very popular a few years ago. It still has its aficionados. It's also a straight clone that could be called a 1st generation clone as well, but it was added late in the making of this chart. Okay, so AD&D 1st edition. Here I added Castles and Crusades, which is Castles and Crusades is not really a clone, but it is a descendant of Advanced, and making a chart like this about the OSR and old school hobby without mentioning Castles and Crusades felt somehow wrong to me. So instead of being a clone, you see, I showed it as a descendant, spiritual descendant of Advanced. as I mentioned about, like for an emulation of the feel of Advanced First Edition, the feel of the game at the table, most people will choose something like the old school sessions Advanced Expansion or Labyrinth Lord Advanced Companion. You need the base versions of the games and those to emulate the advanced game. But I know that some people really swear by those, and it really has its fans. Osric is really the straightest clone of Advanced First Edition you can get. It's streamlined. What's missing is the Gygaxian prose or flair. It's reorganized. It also includes elements like of later supplements like the North Arcana, like the weapon specialization is in there as an option. Well, but it's very very close from the first edition rules. Here we have two interesting second generation games that came out from this crop. Hyperborea is partially based on Osric, partially based on the original Dungeons and Dragons rules. There are elements of Holmes as well. The game, what makes Hyperborea specifically interesting is that it has its own world, Hyperborea, which is completely described in the game. And it is a world based on the pulp fiction of the 1920s and 30s, particularly the works of H.P. Lovecraft, Clark Ashton Smith, Robert E. Howard. You got a feel of familiarity with the ancient Earth, and yet that's like a parallel dimension or a continent that would have gone adrift and created its own dimension. It has a lot of mythos, horrors, and a lot of mystery and darkness to it. The rule system is very very tightly oiled, very very fine. This is a great game. The production values are very high as well. It's for people who like the first edition rules and who want something like who are fans of the Cthulhu mythos and those kind of things, or the Robert E. Howard stories like Backman Morn, like Solomon Kane and all that. Kull, the Conqueror, they will love this. Adventures Dark and Deep is an interesting scenario. That's a game that's built on the idea that what if Gygax had in fact not been fired from TSR and would have created the advanced Dungeons Dragons rules of second edition as he was talking about it in Dungeon Magazine before being fired. He was giving some previews that was in the works, but that never came to be. And this game gathers everything it can, including taking inspiration from the later game of Gary Gygax, Mythos, and Dangerous Journeys, the same game, to build a theoretical second edition to the advanced game by Gary Gygax. This is really good stuff as well, and those people who have it really like it. So now at the end of the second edition, you just have one clone that's for gold and glory. There was another attempt which was called Myth and something else, but it was kickstarted and then basically the project fell apart, so I didn't mention it. What's worth mentioning, however, is that like Castles and Crusades, Hackmaster is kind of a what if game as well. There is a comic strip out there that's called Knights of the Dinner Table. It's very popular with AD&D players and the old schools crowd. And Hackmaster, the third edition was meant as the game that they play in the comic, but as a kind of parody version of Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. And fourth edition is the revision of that game, but in a more serious tone. As now it's a real game that you can play without a joke, right? And it borrows from first and second edition to create its own vibe, its own feel. It's very, very complete, solid game system. People who like the rules heavy types, crunchy type of games will love this. And so that was worth mentioning here, like Castles and Crusade. It would have felt wrong not to mention it. Of course, this is not exhaustive. There are literally hundreds of Retroclones out there, but I wanted to put that together so people could get, just by looking at it, how that works, like instinctively. And then looking at Drive-Thru RPG, searching online, they would find other games that, so that's more like this, and that's how it would plug in there. And I hope that fits the bill. You'll tell me, and I think that's all I wanted to say about this. But so here you have it, the prominent first and second generation Retroclones for Dungeons and Dragons. I'll probably make another one for the non-D&D Retroclones, and then I'll see how that goes, and maybe we'll have another video about this. In the meantime, I hope you get good use from this. You get, if you like what you see, please subscribe and share this video, and talk to you later. Bye bye.